Hey guys, this is New Sensei. Before we begin our February Q&A, I would like to remind you that the subtitle project is still running until the end of March for those who are doing it for the giveaway. Thank you to everyone who's been part of the project so far. The majority of the archery videos have been covered in English, but of course there are still lots of opportunities for international subtitles. Grab them while they're still vacant, because if you don't, I will, which means less prizes for you, I think. On to the questions. The first question comes from Morgan, and the question is, how do you keep your citing marks? There are several ways to do this. The most common obvious way is to write it down. That means a card or a notepad which you keep in your pocket or your quiver. You can also use cite tape. You can either make your own by handwriting it and then stick it on your site, or you can download a citing app from the internet where you put in your bow data and it calculates your site settings. That can be printed out and be stuck onto your site. The third method is to use your smartphone. And you can either use a scoring app or just a regular notepad. So you do your site settings at each distance and you put it into your phone. Regarding phone usage, depending on the competition shot and the rules of your regional governing body, you may or may not be allowed to use your smartphone. For example, in Archery Australia's rules, you are allowed to have a phone on the line, but you can't use it to communicate. So you have to keep it in airplane mode so you can save your data on your phone, but you can't access the internet, for example. But again, this varies very widely based on your local rules, so do check that. Second question comes from Morton. This is an interesting question. Basically, Morton is having problems with string clearance and hitting the arm. And the question is it better to let the string hit the arm or let the arm drop until you acquire the proper form? I can't answer this question accurately because I'm not 100% sure what the problem it actually is without actually seeing it myself. So there are a couple of things here. Firstly, addressing the bow arm drop. Some people have this notion where you're meant to keep the bow arm on target throughout the shot process. So when you release, you're supposed to keep the arm straight. That's not the case. With a proper follow through and proper relaxation, the arm will move this way. As a right-handed shooter, it should drop left and low. That's what it should finish with a proper shot execution. You don't have to do so. That is the most natural way. So if you're doing this after a shot, that's not a bad thing necessarily. If you're doing this preemptively, that can be a bad thing. Again, I'm not exactly sure what you're doing. The other part is letting the string hit your arm, and this is often not a bad thing either. The principle behind alignment is that you actually want the bow arm to be as close to the string as possible. The more outside it is, the less optimal your alignment is, basically. So if you have the arm close to the string, you're going to get much better bone-to-bone alignment. So it's quite normal to tap your arm guard, and in fact some shooters and some experienced coaches have basically scraped skin off, but they're still shooting excellently, so they don't change the arm alignment. So if I had to pick in your situation what the problem is, I would say let the string hit your arm. That's probably going to maximize your alignment at the cost of getting hit. So that's, from what I understand the question is, my choice of the two. But depending on whether this applies to you, either keep the arm straight and let it scrape your arm guard, or let it drop naturally. Third question comes from Melvin. Melvin is using a 66-inch bow with 25-inch draw. What's stopping me from using a 68-inch bow? Nothing. There's actually nothing wrong with using a 68-inch bow. While a 25-inch draw is going to be perfectly in the 66-inch bow recommendation, you can use 6 to 8 inches. I am just above 25-inch draw. I use a 68-inch bow without a problem. The main area of concern is whether you can get a good position on your face. So if you're trying to use the tip of your nose and the corner of your chin and the string across your lips, you might find it a little harder with an oversized bow. But for a person with 25-inch draw shooting a 68-inch bow, that shouldn't be a problem. The shape of your face shouldn't be that much different to the angle of the string, so you can use a 66-inch or 68-inch. You might find the draw weight to be a little lower just because you're underdrawing it, but that's not something you can't work around. You can easily get heavier limbs to make up for the lack of efficiency. Question from Nick: when is the right time to invest in a clicker? Right away. Whether you use it or not, no, it depends, but get one. They're not that expensive. You may also start using one sooner rather than later. There are two schools of thought. The first school of thought is that you should let your draw length consolidate before using a clicker. The second school of thought is you use the clicker to establish your draw length. And while your first few tries at using your bow might be without the clicker because you learn the basics, once you know the basics, in my opinion, start using the clicker, because if you're shooting freestyle and you're going to use the clicker as a regular thing, you may as well get used to it sooner. Get used to clicker control, get used to proper expansion, and the clicker will tell you if you're underdrawing or overdrawing. So that is a valuable learning tool, and I think you can learn more from using a clicker rather than waiting. A question from Zach: which archer, past or present, would you like to go up against? And considering I don't really shoot competitively, this is going to be a very lopsided battle, but I wouldn't mind having a go at the Korean archers, the current champions, Kubon Chan, Kibo Bay. Their technique is worth watching. Just watching them alone is going to be worthwhile. Competing against them is going to be a bit of fun, but that's kind of like, I really admire the Korean style of archery. Very disciplined, very technical, a lot of good science behind it, and I can probably learn a lot more from shooting with the Korean team. Also, as a matter of principle, it's kind of like representing a certain Asian culture here, because I know there's this stereotype that Asians are good at everything, and we might be, but you have good Chinese archers, you have good Japanese archers, you have good Korean archers, Taiwanese archers, but Vietnam has a very bad rep in archery. Like, we don't really exist in the archery world. We have the token Olympian every now and then, but it'd be interesting to have a Vietnamese archer make it to the competitive level. So, we don't really have a strong archery tradition, but to see someone succeed in the modern competition would be quite interesting. Jesse asks, would you consider shooting compound? Yes. I'm not anti-compound. I've said this quite a few times before, that in the future, especially if I want to be an all-rounded coach, I will have to shoot compound. I'm not going to give advice to someone without shooting the bow myself. Is it a priority? No. I'm probably more likely to go to longbow first before compound, because longbows is even simpler than a recurve, whereas compounds I find are a little too technical for me. I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. I might become good at it, but I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much, and I want to cover that area, but it's not something I want to do right away. Tima asks, can we get a stabilizer review? This is a tough one. I don't normally do equipment reviews because I don't have access to a lot of products, so it's hard to compare things. I do plan to do equipment reviews in the time that I have, but stabilizers are very hard because I've only ever used two. And even borrowing stabilizers from the club, it's either you have doinkers or you have SF or cartel cheapos. So it's really hard to do a review for a stabilizer. So as much as I would like to, the answer is probably not. Mike asks, can you do a review on the Win Black Wolf? While normally I don't buy a bow to review, the answer is actually yes, I can do one. One of our club guys is getting several new bows, including the Win TFT, but he does have a Win Black Wolf, which he wants to get restrung, and he wants me to review it actually. So once I get that done, I will have the chance to review the Black Wolf. The next question comes from Brian. This was a personal message, but because this is a very common thing that people come across, this is worth sharing. His question was that he's getting a set of used Eastern X10s, which are 600 spine, and is wondering if he can shoot them from his 30-pound bow, and what the problems are with shooting an overspined arrow, and if there are problems, what can he do about it? Firstly, 600 spine X10s, 30-pound draw, 25-inch draw length, way too stiff. There's no way you can make it work, unfortunately. What will happen is the arrow will fishtail really badly. That side-to-side movement will really ruin your accuracy. You'll lose a lot of velocity, be very inaccurate, and you will drift very far to the left no matter what you do. So that's unfortunately an unusable shaft. It's an excellent shaft. X10s are by far the best shafts in the game right now, but you can't use them. That hurts, I know. I mean, I personally use 750s, and I shoot a 40-pound bow with a 26-inch draw. So, you know, with 600 spine, you do need quite a heavy draw weight or long arms to make it work. So the second part is, can you do anything about it? The answer is partly yes. By having a heavier point, you can soften the dynamic spine. But unfortunately, the gap between a 600 spine arrow and your draw weight is just way too much. Adjusting the point weight can make a slight bit of difference, but that is just way too much. You can't use a 600 spine X10. And honestly, if you're on a budget and you need to get arrows for competition, I wouldn't go X10s. There are probably better options. You can go lower down to the ACEs. That's still very costly. Even the ACCs aren't that bad, but it just sounds like if you're on a student budget, then go for something that's carbon like Eastern Apollos or carbon ones, and they'll be okay. You don't need X10s until 1, you can afford it, 2, you're sponsored, or 3, you're so good that you really need them to be even better. Last question from Ronald. It's a personal question and a very good one. If you could travel back in time, what would you say to your younger self? What I would say is, it's okay to not be okay. I'm saying this from a mental health angle. When I was younger, I knew nothing about mental health or well-being, and it kind of ruined me in a lot of ways. Even from a very young age, when I was 8 years old, I had a lot of things I felt was wrong, and I had to hide it, and that really shaped the way I grew up and the way I saw things, and a lot of it was very unpleasant. And unfortunately, you know, growing up in an Asian family, you don't have that cultural understanding. You know, with Asian families, it's about study and success. So the idea of feeling insufficient or weak or unwell or just not okay, these things don't translate. So it's almost like you're being too lazy, or you play too many games, you're on the internet all day. These things just really eat at you, so you don't understand what you're going through, and that's what I want my younger self to know. And that's actually why I want to be a teacher. You know, the fact that I'm doing right now for the young people that I teach, it's something which I wish someone had done for me. So rather than make people feel bad and guilty about not doing their best, I want to talk to them and have a conversation about why. It's about building strategies, developing resilience, rather than making people feel like they're not meeting expectations. So my younger self had to know that. And that covers all the questions for this month. Again, thank you for your submissions, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas with you. So again, if you want to leave more questions, feel free to ask below or send me a message on Facebook. And also do check out the subtitle giveaway that is running until the end of March. This is New Sensei. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.